Hey guys, it's Sebchoof here. You guys know what there isn't enough of on YouTube? That's right, it's top 10 lists. And today I'm going to be diving into the world of the insane power creep in Realm of the Mad God, especially in the last 2 years, by showing you my picks for the top 10 most overpowered items that you can get, outside of admin item drop parties, that is. I'm really curious what you guys think, so before I start my list, I want to hear your opinions. Comment down below what your top 10 most overpowered items would be, or what you think mine would be. Enough of the bad intro, here's my top 10. At number 10, it's what is in my opinion the best drip in the game, the Vesture. A white bag robe from Lucorix from Oryx Sanctuary. Armors in Realm of the Mad God usually aren't too special, like it's usually just flat stats, and for Vesture, it does give 12 defense, 10 speed, 5 attack, and 40 max MP. But on top of this, if you use an ability, you gain 15 attack, but lose 6 defense, for 5 seconds with a cooldown of 5 seconds. So you can easily gain the extra 20 attack from the robe permanently, as long as you're spamming your ability, which should be easy since you did buy a divine pet with your mum's credit card. Keep in mind, 20 attack is basically a 20% damage boost. This is what it looks like compared to if you use a tier 15 robe. Vesture also gives you a whopping 10 speed. Well, I know that doesn't sound too crazy to you, but speed is for some reason very undervalued by DPS whores. It does help you smash noobs faster because it allows you to get in range of the next noobling quicker, and it makes dodging easier. Also, Vesture is only wearable by classes which are generally slow, like staff and 1 classes, so it helps a lot. For example, like the Slug Wizard has 50 speed, which allows you to go 7.7 tiles per second, but with the extra 10 speed, it allows you to go 8.5 tiles per second, which is a 10% increase. The drawback to this robe is it allows you to take more damage per bullet, but defense compared to HP is pretty laughable, especially in a DPS meta as well. DPS is definitely king, and especially with defense, unless you're getting hit by many bullets, your defense isn't too important. Who cares if you're taking 11 more damage from that one massive 250 damage bullet from Oryx free? Also, if you're a bard or you're with a bard and they use their loot around you, which gives you a defense boost if you don't remember, since Deca does write the code like a chimpanzee and are extremely slow to fix issues that have been in the game for a long time, for some reason, with that defense debuff that the Vesture gives, it's completely negated if you have the defense buff from the bard loot. It doesn't even calculate the difference, it just straight up negates the -6 defense when you're affected by the bard ability. At number 9, we have the Vesture Tome, basically. It also drops from Lucorix and is actually called the Chaotic Scripture. This probably caught a lot of you off guard because I hear a lot of people complaining about this item being weak or too expensive, but I'll show you why it's the very opposite. This item, with one press of the spacebar, lets you slam down a beam dealing, on average, 2000 piercing damage. Whoops, wrong game, sorry. Sure, compared to other abilities, it might not do as much damage per mana over the ability duration, like for example, Mushroom Spell does 4000 damage over 5 seconds. That isn't piercing, but the fact that it's instant allows you to achieve crazy things. By doing so much damage in one frame, it allows you to skip enemy rage phases, and phases in general. This means that your gameplay would be a lot safer and faster, since rage phases can have invincibility and end up making the enemy poop out a lot more shots. It's especially annoying when doing nests, because when fighting the big bees, when they enter their rage phase, they usually go invincible, then they go to those nest things to buff up, then they go invincible again, then they chase you with their strongest attacks, when you can just avoid all of that by going poof. Afro has an interesting video showing the exact same thing, except instead with divinity swords. The sword has a lightning strike like the tome that used to trigger at a certain time interval in the server, so a lot of people could do it at the same time. So Afro and his friends were just insta-buffing enemies, and it just looked so stupid. And if you watch the video, you can see that it's a lot easier and safer. They changed the divinity though. The lightning now triggers at a time interval on your end instead of server based, but you can still see how crazy a run could be if you do have these lightning strikes. Speaking of Divinity Swords, wow, oh my god, what a coincidence. Divinity Sword is at spot number 8. Divinity drops from Oryx free, and just like all entries on this list, it's very stupidly overpowered compared to its counterparts. Here's what this sword's damage is compared to the highest tiered sword that also drops from Oryx free. Just looking at this damage comparison on the graph, it shows you how much of a joke the balance in this game is, but there's other things that make it even more ridiculous. Firstly, the range of the Divinity is normally 0.5 tiles more than tier 14, so it's already more damage and more range, but it also can be 2.25 tiles longer if you include include the lightning strike. How the divinity sword exactly works is it has its standard primary projectile which deals on average 300 damage, but it also has a beam with a 2.25 tile radius on the tip of where the projectile expires, and it deals on average 700 damage. And because there's a beam that charges when you're moving between enemies, technically divinity does even more damage in comparison, since the beam charges before you reach the next enemy. If you don't know what the divinity is, you probably think that's all. Well, I haven't even mentioned that the attacks are piercing for some reason. For the longest time, the primary weakness of melee classes were that they had really low range, and they didn't have strong options for clearing groups of enemies, which made the class interesting and balanced. It's really interesting in games when classes have difference in power dynamics, where you might choose one for its strengths, but it also might have its unique weaknesses as well. Well, over time, every weakness is getting polished for some reason, and basically every class is getting every buff over time. Not only does Divinity have a 6.25 tile radius with the beam, but it's also extremely efficient for clearing groups. Another reason why Divinity is really efficient for clearing groups is it scales with attack damage as well, and damaging buffs. It also pierces armor, and you can shoot through walls with it as well. So choosing enemies and clearing stuff like crystals and fungal cave-ins is easier. Absolutely disgusting. When you do have both buffs, berserking and damaging, Sword of Colossus and tier 14 sword do more damage to a point, to a single target, but with multiple enemies, Divinity will always be king. At number 7, who knew we'd get another O3 item? It's the DNA Wand, or less commonly known as the Lumiere Wand. The one that drops from the same Lucoric set actually as the first two items I mentioned. This wand firing is really interesting because it has very slow moving shots that deal stupidly OP damage. It also has weird shot buttons, which is why I call it the DNA Wand. It actually has two firing modes that you can swap between by shooting once with another single bullet wand. Between the two firing modes, you can hit any enemy within the maximum range, which is a crazy 9.5 tiles. The slow firing shots aren't as gross to use as they might seem, because when you think about it, majority of bosses are either standing still or moving in a very expected pattern. Once you do get very good at using the Lumiere and predicting the enemy movement, you'll be hitting all of the shots anyway. Slow moving shots also technically extend the maximum range of a weapon against enemies that chase you, since they linger through the air for longer, making it even better against bosses like Oryx Free and Void. The primary firing mode is almost always better for combat, by the way, which is the one that you have by default. The best wand before this was the Wand of the Fallen, and that deals almost half the damage with almost half the max range. It's so overpowered that Discords count it as 2 best in slot items on their cringe gear requirement sheets. Number 6 brings us some nostalgia. What's the class that historically has been known as the most overpowered? You probably guessed Warrior and you'd be right. Definitely a class that was stronger when divine pets weren't a thing, but still one of the best. One of the reasons why it shined is the value that you got when you spent mana. The tier 6 helmet gave you 4 seconds of speedy and berserk for only 90 mana. It might have been more since they shifted some over to Wizmod, but I forgot how much. And yeah, that's 2 super strong buffs, especially when your weakness is low range and speed, and it just amplifies your already high damage. How could this be even better? The tiered helmet, in my opinion, has always been overpowered and should be on this list, but somehow there's an item that's blatantly better. Would you believe me that there was a helmet that did the exact same thing as a tier 6 helmet basically, but did an extra 10,000 damage every 5 seconds? I feel like this one is stupidly underrated, but it's the Tricorn of the High Seas, or the Pirate ST helmet. It's a slightly more mana expensive tier 6 helmet, costing 95 mana, but it has a unique function. Every time the wearer takes at least 40 damage, it shoots 8 shots in a tight 45-degree-ish cone towards the direction you were getting shot from. And it has 8 different shots dealing 800 damage each, with the total of 6,400 damage. This can be done every 3 seconds and it has a 7 range. It also has that one-shot potential I was talking about previously, with the Scripture Tome and the Divinity Sword. There is no reason if you have a Divine Pet to not use this over a tiered helmet, if it's available, because you end up just dealing way more damage. At number 5, we have the OP Dagger from the Curse Library. No, not the Golden Dagger, I'm talking about the Corruption Cutter. Just like previous weapons on this list, it's a massive damage increase. At 0 defense, it's about 40% more damage. It does decrease in damage significantly when defense is raised because it shoots multiple shots, but armor break is pretty plentiful now. The drawback of this weapon was supposed to have a very long spread, so you basically had to stand on enemies, but if you use it correctly, you can actually hit targets at a 4 tile range. Only 0.5 tile is shorter than the tier 14 dagger, which deals about half the damage at 0 defense. Couple with the fact that the forge system makes this item a joke to craft because of where it drops. Since it drops from a Godlands dungeon, it only costs about 400 forge file, 45 gold, and 90 silver to craft, and you can buy the blueprints from the Grand Bazaar. You could literally craft this item almost every single day if you have the materials, since you get 300 forge fire per day. You would think the best dagger in the game would drop somewhere epic, but think again, chimps. Now you guys might be surprised that this one isn't coming in at number 1. While it is crazy, there is still much more overpowered items. At number 4, we have the Incubation Mace. The reason why this one is at number 4 and not first is it's only special for the range and damage. And damage isn't anything too unique in this game, but the amount that it provides is pretty stupid. How it basically works, it charges for 2.6 seconds and then it strikes. You can see it charge, and when it's ready to attack, it's its maximum size. It's limited to the range of summons, which is like 7 or 9 tiles or something stupid, and it shoots 4 shots 2 times of 325 damage shots per bunny, which you can have like 3 over the time. During 1 bunny duration, which is 5.2 seconds, you can deal 39,000 damage. Even though I believe maces are already pretty damn overpowered for the amount of damage, range, and safety they provide, the general agreement in the community is that this one is the most overpowered by far, and is why a lot of people probably expected this as the most overpowered item on this list. Because it works like other summons, you can swing it around walls, so you can hide behind a shield like a chicken while the bunnies do all the work. It also gives you 5 attack and 40 HP, 2 of the strongest stats in the game. At least this item isn't as ridiculously easy to obtain like the rest of the items on this list. If you did want to get this item though, you'd not be very lucky, because it is locked behind a blueprint that was only able to be obtained in Easter of last year, unless they re-release it, which people have been begging for. But if you do have the blueprint, it's even cheaper than the other legendary items to craft. For number 3, we have a ring. It's in my opinion the strongest ring in the game, but for some fucking reason it's also the most common. I probably gave it away, you guessed it, it's the Snake Eye ring, and it drops from the treasure room and normal bosses of Snake Pit. Some of you guys would be like right now, Seb, you're an idiot. This ring only gives you free attack and free speed, but it's all about its effect. The Snake Eye ring has an effect where if you use your ability you get speedy for 2 seconds, and it has a 5-second cooldown. There are a few big reasons why this was an incredibly stupid release. Firstly, there's many classes in this game, and the interesting thing about them is that they have differences in what makes them strong and what makes them weak. Some of them are really fast, some of them can help you help your team, and some of them are really hot, and some also do heaps of damage. The ones that do more damage usually are slower to compensate for their DPS, like for example Wizard and Summoner come to mind. They do a lot more damage, but at the cost they're less mobile and squishy. Like Wizard has always been seen as the realm of the Mad God glass cannon, but also a squishy and slow. Imagine classes having individual identities though. Over the years, more classes have been getting effects that should have been unique to a single one. Like for example, Curse used to only be applicable by Mystic, but now Necro can do it with the Cult Skull, Warrior can do it with the Nest Helmet, Assassin can do it with the Parasite Poison, Priest can even do it with a Tome, and I'm sure there will be even more in the future. And that's not just for Curse as well, this goes for like Armor Break, Stun, Damaging, Invisibility, Poison. But this is the craziest case because the Snake Eye ring is so accessible and easy to use. Since abilities in Realm almost always have non-existent cooldowns, and since mana regen has risen exponentially, it's very easy to just have the Snake Eye ring on a hotkey in your inventory and swap it out every 5 seconds so you get that massive speed boost. When I made my class tier list like 2 years ago, a lot of classes were limited by their speed, but this ring alone would have changed up the positions of the classes drastically, since being a mobile isn't really an issue in the game anymore. Now this one probably will be the biggest surprise to people. In second place we have the Tier 7 Prism, which is only droppable by Oryx free. But to be honest, it could be any tiered Prism. This ability has been slept on for a while now, and it was so undervalued that it actually got quite a big buff from Deco in terms of the duration of the decoys. There's 2 big reasons why this ability is in my opinion the best right now, the decoying and the mobility. Firstly, with the decoying, why have a shitty short range shield that can only stun half of the enemies, since since majority are now immune, when you can shoot a dummy on the opposite side of the enemy and it being heaps more effective, as long as the enemy is using an attack that targets the closest person, which is usually the most dangerous, the decoy makes it a joke. They had to nerf this specifically for Gemsbok and the Bridge Sentinel because it made the whole fight ridiculously tedious and stupid, and a leech's wet dream. Literally every human and their dog playing makes it through with a good trickster, and it's really effective for other bosses as well, like Ophri and Cultist for example. Even if it's only effective for just one phase, it's way more than what other abilities are doing defensively, until we get to number 1 that is. Not only does the decoy last 10 seconds on the tier 7 prism, which is 3 times more than the stun, but it also affects the enemy's behavior. So during chasing phases, this keeps the enemy where you want it to be, which means your group has better accuracy, doing more damage, and the boss isn't giving you an unwanted lap dance like my uncle does. So many bosses have these phases like the Nest boss and NPC, but why not turn them into sitting ducklings? The decoying is great, but the instant teleport that the prism provides also makes it the fastest and most maneuverable class in the game, so basically the best rushing class. If you have someone rushing your cult, it's most likely on a trickster, because cheaters can't rush on other classes anyway, but that's mostly because it's such a safe and easy class to rush on compared to the rest, because you can just jump over enemies and the decoy helps you keep them from chasing you, like for example with Spooky Boy in Lost Halls, who would teleport on you if it weren't for the decoys you left behind. Now, at number 1, drum roll please, we have the incredibly disgusting Kendo Fungal Tome. Before I aggressively rant, I'll just let you know that this is the tome that drops from the fungal boss. Now if you thought divine pets used to be broken when they healed through damage, you've seen nothing yet mate. Let me let you know how the fungal tome exactly works. Press space and if you have a nice 80 mana available, you put down a mushroom that lasts 3 seconds. It heals 120 HP per second to 10 people within a 6.5 tile range. In September of 2020, tomes received massive nerfs across the board, and this is deserved because chimps were just standing in a 50-man group, just spam healing to stay invincible basically. But they made it that the more people in the group, the more weak the healing becomes. However, not with the mushroom tome, although it did get a slight nerf in terms of the numbers it healed. Divine pets used to heal 90 health per second through combat. They still heal 90 HP every second as long as you don't get hit, but mushrooms heal you 120 HP per second each, either way, if you're in combat or not. And yeah, that's only one mushroom. They're only 80 mana each, so you can go ham and spam as many as you like, basically, making you way more OP than any priest build was before.
Oh, almost spam, go, go, go! Oh my god!
Like with your usual max mana, you can probably put down 4 or 5 straight away. So that's healing 600 HP per second, even if you're in combat and pet stasis. And then after that, as long as the priest isn't in combat, you can probably use 1 more every second. And since the mushrooms last 3 at a time, you can have 3 up consecutively. There's also a really cracked item combo that allows you to spam even more mushrooms. If you use a Mad Lab robe, which discounts your abilities by 25%, and a gemstone, which discounts your abilities by 30%, this makes your ability cost 56 mana. No, I'm not trolling. So basically double the healing that I stated before, and that's current Realm of the Mad God for you. And that's only 1 priest. Double this again if you have 2. Now I know there's probably a lot of nooblings shouting at the screen saying, Seb, when I'm in 50-man groups, Fungal Tome only heals 10 of us. Why are you such an idiot? Well, if you weren't so bad, you'd be playing in small groups, because they made the HP scaling in this game so dog shit. The optimal amount of people to run with is 13 at maximum, anything over 20 is way slower, and anything over 30 starts becoming relatively painful. Whenever I do 50-man runs in Realm, it's considered a challenge for myself, because the damage compared to the enemy HP is so ridiculous. But yeah, you'll be surprised at how much one good priest can carry now. Even Wotan would be able to duo an Abyss of Demons with a really good priest.
Man, I'm not a boomer, come on.